Happy
Okay.
Easter to everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our lesson for tonight in Greek Hellenic education with Professor John Hatzopoulos. Mr. Hatzopoulos, you have the floor.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the lesson 3. Let me take the screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Let me see if I can. How about now?
Okay.
Now you see the next transparency.
No.
Move the first. Move to the second.
Yeah, I moved to the second, but okay, I have to change it. All right.
Not yet.
Yes.
Now you see the second transparency, all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now you are right. You continue.
In full screen for the transparencies, the PowerPoint, it doesn't show it with the Zoom. You have to understand that.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I have an announcement to make tonight that Jerome called, sent me an email that he won't be able to attend the lecture, but he will expect the YouTube to see it. The previous lessons are on the YouTube, as you can see here, the lesson 1 and the lesson 2. Today, we are going to cover several topics. Most of them, as you can see here in the list, they are from previous lectures, but the one we are going to give emphasis is down here, the coordinate systems, the three-dimensional spaces, and the mind space. These three topics here are the ones we are going to cover, and some mathematical considerations here. So, in the laboratory, Lenny has prepared the Becker of Anton Chekhov that is reading, and gave us a couple of links to get prepared for that, for the discussion. Also, we try to make short tonight due to the Easter celebration, the Greek Orthodox Easter celebration. Okay, especially here in Greece, but in the States, it's early. It's still early. But over here is in a few hours. In the previous lectures, we already talked about nature. There are laws and rules. The laws are mandatory. The rules have tolerance, limits, and exceptions. And also the supreme rule is the rule of balance that contains all rules. And we also said that the tolerance, limits, and the exceptions for the rules, they guide the the normal function of the nature objects. These tolerant limits, exceptions, they help to have to those objects diversity and evolution. And this works with all kinds of nature objects, like the planetary system, the human body, how it functions, and the human body parts. And whatever disturbs the balance, we have excess, defect, desire, anger, logic for the human behavior. Then this is what what is wrong, what is evil, what is bad, and what is good. So whatever disturbs the balance is the bad thing. Like, for instance, if the heartbeats they go over a limit, then we have something bad. Someone gets sick, and so forth. Again, Hellenic education has three things to consider: harmony with nature, and when the healing of the spirit, and the sense of the beautiful. For Hellenic education, the aims is for virtue two models. Actually, Hellenic education targets the virtuous person. In Hellenic education, the virtuous person is the person who has internal and external balance and is able to have quality in life and be able to have a peaceful society working towards exploration. As we said, the virtuous person is considered having is based in two models: the Platonic of internal balance, where logic must balances desire and anger, and the Aristotelian, or as external balance, has to do with the actions, which must be in a mid-space, not to be incomplete, defective, or exaggerated, excessive. And actually, the Aristotelian mid-space of virtue models the human error, as we will see later on in some other lecture, in next lecture, I guess. Non-virtue, we have deception and all evil things that happen, and the mess we have today. A non-virtuous person is a slave of desires or the anger or inadequacy of logic to reason their actions. We said about internal balance. Given this example, I won't go again. I will only emphasize that we need to have anger management, desire management within the mid-space of virtue, and this is what we hold for the Hellenic education, these three things. Now, going into the mathematical considerations and the internal balance, and taking the Platonic model that the logic must be sufficient to balance desire and anger, we can use now mathematics to express that. We use the symbol L for logic, D for desire, and A for anger. And in the ideal case, we have the balancing logic, which we can call it either LB or LDA as balancing desire and anger. And we already said about that this is balancing of forces. We have the logic, the balancing logic you see here, and the relationship to have equilibrium there, so that the logic balances desire and anger. And this is when the two vectors here, desire and anger, are with an angle of theta, non-right angle. And this is, I use this figure here because of the example with the horses. But as you can see in the mind space, we are going to use this situation. We are going to have right angle between angle, desire, and anger. And the balancing logic is given by this formula. Now, one thing we need to consider if we want to work with mathematics is the quantification. And in this particular case, we are going to use with the mind parameters like logic, desire, and anger, and see how we can quantify them. For instance, we know that anger can be too angry, someone too angry or less angry. So there is a scale here to measure the degree of anger. The same thing with desire. We may desire something too much or less, or no desire at all. And the same thing with logic also. Logic could be too, well, we have lack of logic, we have insufficient logic or exaggeration. But what we have to deal with is three different units of measurement here. We cannot measure with the same units anger or desire and logic. Okay, how we can compromise all of these things to be compatible. Mathematics can do that, and can do that with the process called normalization. And I give you here an example of having four different quantities: elevation model, fuel, moisture, elevation, fuel model, excuse me, fuel, moisture, elevation, and aspect. We use this for trying to predict the ignition of a fire in a forest fire. And we use, for instance, the fuel and its moisture, the elevation, and the aspect. Aspect is the orientation of the slope of the hill that we are dealing with. Now, these four quantities, they are measured in different units. How we do the compromise to make them compatible is the process of normalization. And how that process works, let's take the elevation. The elevation, if you go on the map, for instance, these four locations on the ground. Each square you see here, it's a location on the ground. Maybe the size of the square is 1,000 by 1,000 meters or 100 by 100 meters. But anyway, they represent an area on the ground, a square area on the ground. So you see this area on the ground has an average elevation 150 meters, this one 156, this one 154, and this is 170. And what we do with the normalization process, we transform these values into a scale between 0 and 1. And also this scale here, this transformation eliminates the units. We have no units because, as you can see here, the normalization equation, what is it? For instance, the elevation like 150 we put here, minus the minimum, which is 150, and maximum minus minimum is 170 minus 150. Now, if we do that, we'll get 0, okay, for this one. But if we put 156 here for elevation, we get 0.3. And therefore, because on the numerator and denominator we have elevation units, then the normalized value here has no units. So over here we have no units. The same thing we do to the other quantities. So at the end, they have a range of values between 0 and 1, and they have no units, so they are compatible. And this is what we have to do with the mind space. Now, to go into the mind space, we have to take a look at the coordinate systems. We have several coordinate systems, like with one dimension, that we need one value here to represent a point in this one dimension system. It is just one axis with a 0 unit, and it goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, as you see here. Basically, a reference system is defined by a point which is the origin of the system, and one or more axes passing through the origin and the unit of measurement along each axis. Actually, human mind could understand up to 3 dimensions, okay? We understand 1 dimension here, 2 dimension, we have 2 axes, and we need 2 values here to represent the location of a point. For instance, the first one is on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3.3, you see it's right here. And on the y-axis is 1.7, 1.7 right here, and we define the point in the 2-dimensional system. In the 3-dimensional system, we need 3 values. We need, one is the x, you can see here, we project the point down to the xy plane. And then we have, here is the x value, the y value, and the z value is this one, the vertical. So in each coordinate system, there is a mutual and reciprocal relation between these 3 values, for instance, here, and the location of the point. In one location of the point correspond 3 values, and in 3 values correspond to 1 unique location of the point. In 1 dimension, we have only 1 value, in 2 dimensions, 3 values. In the, say, n dimensions, because the dimensions, they could go to infinity, in the n-dimensional system, we need to have n values to get the location of a point. Now, another coordinate system, these are Cartesian coordinate systems you see here. This is a coordinate system on a sphere, like which you work on the surface of the sphere. We define the location of a point with 2 angles. The one is called geographic longitude, that you see here, that is measured with the great circle. If we consider that this is the shape of the Earth, then P prime, you see here, is the North and South Pole, and I prime is the equator. So on the equatorial plane here, we have any great circle that passes through the poles is called meridian. And the first meridian that passes through the observatory of Greenwich, you see here, okay, is the beginning of measuring the geographic longitude, the lambda, you see here. And from the equator to the point on the surface of the Earth here, we measure this angle of latitude, phi, call it, you see here. Now, if we want also to have the elevation, we see how over the sphere the point is, and we have also the 3rd dimension, the elevation. But on the surface of the sphere, we need only 2 parameters, lambda and phi, longitude and latitude, as you can see here. Now, we need to examine the 3-dimensional systems or spaces. So we said about the geometrical space that human mind understands. So okay, with 3 axes and 3 values, x, y, z. Another coordinate system that has 3 axes is the color space. With the 3 values, red, green, blue, we can define any hue in this color space. And I want to say that if we have more, say, bands here, we may call this red, green, blue, the color bands, the primary color bands, actually they are. And to remember what do they represent, if someone remembers the values, the numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, these 4 numbers, they have 3 spaces between 4 and 5. is the blue space. Between 5 and 6 is the green space, the green band, we may call it, and between 6 and 7 is the red band. Actually, to understand this 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers represent, we must go to 400, 500, 600, 700 nanometers. This is the wavelength of the spectrum. And it is the visible spectrum. But we can create bands with more narrow, so we have more axes. Actually, we may have in the hyperspectral space, just in the visible, to have 1,000 bands. Okay, in this case, we have a coordinate system with 1,000 axes. Okay, but we stay with this, which is used for colorimetry. And it's used also in the computer screen and to view photographs, etc. This is the color space. And then we go into the human mind space. It's a three-dimensional system with 3 axes, desire and anger you see here in the creative plane, and vertically is the logic axis. Now, if we go into the mind space, you can see it here. The current state of any human mind, we may call it MS. Okay, that is the current state of the human mind. That means in this current state, we have logic, desire, and anger, 3 values. What is the desire and anger? Desire is this vector here. Anger is this red vector up to here. And logic is this vector of, that goes over here, okay? So this is the current mind space of a person. Now, the balancing logic of desire and anger is this one. This one is different than the current logic. Current logic is L, but balancing logic is LDA, this, balancing desire and anger logic. If we take the balancing logic and we put it up here, then we get the difference between the current logic, L, and the balancing logic, LDA. This difference, L minus LDA, okay, give us the human error in this particular case, okay? And here are the formulas. You see human error, LCARL logic, balancing logic, and that's how we calculate the balancing logic. In this way, we have quantized the human error using the internal balance model, latest model. And I think this is the end of my presentation. This is the last transparency. And to finish with the Pythagoras student self-daily evaluation, before they go to bed, they ask themselves the following questions. Τι παρέβην, what offense did I commit? Τι δέρεξα, what did I do that I had to do? And τι μηδέων ουκ ετελέστη, what I had to do and I did not do. And this is very interesting. And now we have the lab, and I hope to work also in this nice table that Eleni has prepared for you, for the bigger of the Anton Chekhov, you see here. And I would, we must try to not to go long due to the day, it's the Greek Easter tonight, okay? And if possible to not to to take a long time. I give the floor now. Okay, we'll go back. And if you have any
Give
questions,
the floor to Helen.
yeah, well, before we go to Helen, I want to ask you if you have any questions. Okay, you want to ask concerning the lecture I gave you.
I can, may I say thank you so much for a very interesting approach to the human personality and creating a mathematical model. It's something very new to me. I'm not sure at all how it relates to Platonic and Aristotelian thought and philosophy, but I can see the connections. There are connections that I'm beginning to see. I thank you so much for a fascinating approach to the human condition. So that's what I can say.
Helen,
Very complicated.
actually, it's not complicated. It's very simple. That's why I insist and
Okay, for
I
you.
cover just one topic at a time. It is this analysis is based on Aristotle and Plato, and it goes one step ahead, and we have to do that in our times in order to face the current problems. Also, I must say, this analysis, they use the deception to destroy the internal balance. That's what they do. Okay, they know about that. And we have to, and the only ones they don't know is the education system, to make people aware how these things they work and be able to face the deception. This is what I want to emphasize here. Okay, Helen, you have the floor.
Okay, so I need to share my screen. Do I have permission to share the screen?
Just a moment, just a moment.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
Now you are right.
Okay. Hmm. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's okay.
Can you see my first slide? Is
Yes,
everything?
yes.
Okay, good, good. Okay, I'm not going to take very long, and Stella, I'm assuming that you've read the short story. It wasn't that long. Maybe you've read it in the past. I happen to be a fan of Chekhov. I've read all of his stories. I've taught some of them. This one I chose mainly because of the characters and their actions, and also how they are, I guess, managed and controlled by social forces beyond their control, except perhaps for one of the character, very interesting character. So I just wanted to present two themes before I continue. And the theme are as following: a man or woman may be led by fate, but he or she can refuse to follow. I'm thinking of Olga in this respect. And one other theme, the private kindness of one individual towards another, a petty, thoughtless kindness, an unwitnessed kindness, something we can call senseless kindness. And that word senseless is only because of the way our society is structured, but a kindness outside of any social or religious system. And again, I'm thinking of Olga. And I'm sure that all of you can come up with other themes in this short story. I don't think I need to go over this. Dr. Hatzopoulos has already discussed it. I think we're perhaps need to go further and go right to the chart. Now, what I did with the chart, I filled in already some of the ideas of each character, some of the ideas that I have. I'm not sure this is correct. This is something that we can discuss together. So Stella, I will give you a few, Stella and John and Dimitri and Peter, give you a few moments to consider what I have written and maybe to change or correct some of these ideas. And we can also look at the short story as well. I have it ready to look at if we need to look at some of the issues. So for Lushkov, I'll start. But for Lushkov, I'm looking at internal balance. So he's out of balance in many ways. He's out of balance. He lies. He's pretentious. He lies because he tells Skvortsov that he lost his job, that he has no way of getting a job. He was a choir master. He was a teacher. He's constantly lying. He doesn't tell Skvortsov the reason for his for being a beggar. And the reason, of course, is that he is an alcoholic. He's addicted to alcohol. So his decisions and his behaviors are not in balance. And this is, of course, we're looking at Plato and internal balance. Can we stop there for a moment? Am I on the right track, Dr. Hatzopoulos?
Yes, you are on the right track, and anybody has to say its view about the three characters, the four characters in the story.
Yes.
All right. So
For Lushkov, I have something to tell.
yes.
What was the reason for Lushkov that leads to have a behavior not in balance? What was the reason? Was it
Well,
due to fear or due to truth?
His dependence on alcohol. I mean, according to the short story, it's his dependence on alcohol. Initially, at the beginning of the short story, we find out that he is an alcoholic.
I think it goes of his laziness.
Oh, well, that is what Skvortsov believes.
Yes, that's right.
That is what Skvortsov believes. Exactly. Okay. So, but may I just make a comment about the laziness? Which comes first? Is it the dependence on the alcohol, or is it laziness? Is laziness an internal, innate characteristic of a human being? What would Plato say?
Uneducated. He is not educated.
Again, the lack of, well, if you remember from the short story, he has some education. He was a teacher. He was a choir master. He had education.
Not training. I am talking about education, therapy of the spirit.
You're talking about a moral education? Or,
His spirit is not educated,
okay,
and he's totally out of balance. Internal balance does not exist.
yes, and they're not in balance. Absolutely. We could say he's unaware. He's unaware of the causes. He's unaware of the causes of his problems. He's unaware. So yeah, he's not in balance. Anything else?
From Kefalonia, I opened something, maybe I can have some line to hear. If I heard Helen well, he was educated, he had a job, he was choir. So I'm not sure if we can say he's not educated. Now, who raised the question, is it because of being alcoholic, because it's laziness, and so on? What about that you said that he lost a job? Somebody who is having an income, somebody who is working, somebody who has an interest on an everyday basis, and becoming totally, as we say, on the street, what is he going to do? Drinking, smoking, being lazy? Of course, you can say if you're well educated, look for another job. Well, it's a different story because of the internal balance. But we need to see also the pragmatic ways, especially today, when we go and we look into the street people who are there, and we have not uneducated, but unemployment. People who might be looking for a job and cannot find a job, and then they start drinking.
Well, Peter, I'm not sure. Yes, everything that you say makes, of course, a lot of sense. It's very important, but I'm not sure at this point we're looking for pragmatic solutions. I mean, we'll try to come to some agreement with if we try to reach a balance here. And so before we go to that point, let's look at the external balance of the Aristotle's model. So what I put here is that he is, because of his internal, I hear a lot of background noise. Okay, because of, could you,
we'll
Peter, could you, thank you. Because of the internal defects, let's use the word defect, because there's no internal balance. We have also issues with the external balance. So he is submissive to alcohol and both the two characters, the two other main characters. He's submissive to Skvortsov and Olga. Why is he submissive? Why does he become a submissive person to the lawyer, Skvortsov? Can someone just say a few words about that? How does he show his submissiveness? I don't want to just dominate the conversation. I prefer if people participate a little bit more.
Basically, I think he's submissive to him because he's revealed for who he is. So instead of arguing with him, he realizes that his con game was revealed. So at that point, I think he's just kind of letting the lawyer Skvortsov go on. And in the end, I think that the alcohol is driving him to whatever money he can get or whatever he can provide to him. It's I think it's all driven by the alcohol.
Okay, I think, yes, I mean, he becomes submissive. So it's interesting that we use the word submissive. You agree, Stella, with the term submissive, his outward behavior, but that changes. Just curious, not to backtrack, but his submissiveness, how does that connect with the internal situation? I'm just asking a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer right now, but as you were talking, Stella, I was thinking of how does this word, his behavior of submissiveness as an alcoholic, how does it relate to his internal imbalance? So anyways, I'm gonna continue. What about Olga? How does he is also submissive to Olga? In what way? How is he submissive to Olga?
Olga's behavior towards beggar to end up chopping the wood for him, it was the greatness of the soul to transcend the external balance of virtue.
She's a
That's
hero.
for Olga.
Yes, but how? Yes, you're right. You're right. But how? What does Lushkov, the beggar? How does Lushkov behave towards Olga? And we will not how Olga behaves towards him. We'll go down there later, where she's down at the bottom. I don't know if we have time. I will send this chart to you later, but let's concentrate on Lushkov for a moment. How do his actions affect his change? Because he does change.
Is what Jerome said, Xenia, the Olga's Xenia to care for the others changed him.
Okay, you're talking about, and that's correct, but again, you're talking about Olga. Olga is the third character. We'll put that down here. My question is because I'm learning about all of this myself.
Yeah.
How does Lushkov behave towards Olga? What does Lushkov do to Olga? What is his yeah?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Stella said that he has a problem, and that's alcoholic, and this problem drives him. That means he has a bias in his logic, and this bias is something that he could somehow understand if there is a proper way to educate him, and this is what Olga does.
He just follows her. He basically follows her because he's hoping in the end he's going to get some money to satisfy his desire.
Exactly. I think I like the word follow. He just goes along. He goes along with Olga. At first, he goes along with Olga and really all the way until Skvortsov leaves the house towards the end. He goes along with her. He is submissive to Olga and how she handles his situation. I'm not sure what you mean by bias. Somebody who said bias? Was it you? Sorry, who said that?
John, Dr. Hatzopoulos.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you mean the bias? Who has bias? Olga or Lushkov?
Beggar has the bias because he is alcoholic. Alcoholic is the bias he has.
She does. She does seem to show that, but we remember what she does. And again, we're going to go. I think everybody. I think most of you understand how important Olga is at this point. That's wonderful in this story, and so that's the yeah, she has a bias, but
She doesn't have bias.
what does she do with the bias though?
So,
She refuses to accept the bias, doesn't she?
no, Olga doesn't have a bias. The beggar has the bias of alcoholism that drives him to behave like a beggar. And this is something that Olga understands and uses her logic at a heroic level, I would say, advanced logic, to be able to try him to bring back into balance. And she,
Yanni, and her wisdom too, not only her logic and her wisdom
they go
due
together.
to her education. Well, logic is, wisdom brings you more into logic and other things. So she has also not only logic, but wisdom too.
Can I just say something really quickly? So I
Anytime.
agree with some of those points. If we can take an alternate view, do you think Olga was compassionate, or did she just want to get the job done and get rid of him? Because after with his chop, I'm not trying to be an instigator, but you know, she's saying, oh my gosh, the quicker I do this, the quicker he's out of my hair. And by her just, because I don't know how you could motivate a person when you're constantly insulting him, in a sense, because there's, well, you know, compassion to me is like, she wouldn't have been muttering, I'm just saying my opinion, would have been muttering the words. And by coincidence, because of the way she treated him, it created something in him. But did she really have the intent to change him with her actions? I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that out.
No.
I understand what you're saying, but when I was reading it, I was like, is she doing this truly for compassion, or is she doing this because she just wants, you know, the quicker it's done, the quicker it's out of his, you know, and then just by doing what she's doing, it's a consequence that occurred, not as an intentional consequence, as an unintentional consequence that he.
Stella, do you remember, my mind is a blank, do you remember how long, what is the duration of the plot, the time that he spent?
I don't remember how long.
I think it was 6 months, if I remember. It was quite a while. And during that time, it wasn't a short time, it was a longer period of time. So would you imagine that Olga is foolish enough, is just a foolish woman who doesn't want to be bothered with this Lushkov and just does all this work for him? Do you imagine possibly that she is a servant? And if you know anything about the history of the time, you know, she was a servant, and if she didn't follow her master's rules, she could lose her job. Maybe was she, you know, there are other considerations here. Is she just?
No, I do understand, but at the same time, he couldn't see what was happening from the house. So she was like, I understand that she was trying to help. I'm just throwing out there too, at the same time, if you're compassionate, I don't know if you would necessarily insult someone time and time again. That's what I'm sure, and deep down inside of her, she did what her master said, but you know, she could have kept quiet and just done it without insulting him, is what I'm saying. So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that necessarily, yes, in the end, she is a heroine. I'm not saying that she's not.
I'm sure if Chekhov could hear you speak, he would agree with you. I mean, he leaves if you read his short stories, he leaves them open to interpretation. Right. He doesn't want us to, he doesn't give us any solution to any of the issues, any of the problems. So Stella, what you're saying is very important. And I'm sure the author would agree with you. The great Chekhov would agree with you as well. So a lot of interesting ideas. I'm still, you know, Dr. Hatzopoulos, I'm always trying to bring it back to the philosophical principle here. So I'm just going to move, and the consequences of the actions and behaviors, the outer actions and behaviors, is that really, I mean, we can agree, Lushkov gains self-respect. And in some ways, maybe we can say that he behaves a little bit like Skvortsov at the end. If you remember the end of the story, Lushkov changes as a result of Skvortsov's actions as well, not only of Olga's actions, but of Olga's as well. Do we agree with that or not? Are these the consequences?
We agree.
I think Olga was the main
Yes.
that
Yes.
led him to be a honor man.
Yes, I agree. That
It means that she helped him more than the lawyer.
right. The lawyer brought him to Olga. And if
Yes.
Olga wasn't there, this wouldn't have occurred.
Can we say anything about what you just said before? How many more minutes do we have? I keep thinking I'm going too much. I don't want to go over my time. Do we have time or not?
We have time, yes, we have.
We have a few more. Okay, good. So what does that mean? What does that say about Skvortsov? He has these negative traits. He's not in balance. Self-righteous, self-absorbed, prone to anger, prone to deception. He's not in balance. He makes assumptions about Lushkov and Olga. He makes, yes, yeah,
May I, interrupt for a while?
please.
Try here to view things in a simple way, because if we go further, how one thinks, how the other, okay, it will make it complicated. For the beggar, what I want to say, for instance, he is out of balance. He has the bias of the alcoholism, and he has the logic. His logic is shifted due to the bias to cover his alcoholic problems, as Stella mentioned. And his action also is out of balance because he is a beggar, okay? And the consequences is to be on the street a beggar. This is simple enough. Now, after he changed, all right, he gets back to balance and everything is all right. But we are talking about the beggar, okay, before he changes. Then we go to Olga, for instance. Olga is we go to the lawyer. The lawyer is a balanced person. No matter what he makes at the moment, the final action is that counts, okay? Because action, thoughts, etc., may make a lot, but the action is that the one that counts. And the action is that he picked the beggar and gave him a chance, offer him a job. So the lawyer is full in internal and external balance, and the consequences is that he was able to, through Olga anyway, but it was his action, as Stella said, that brought the beggar back into normal life. And Olga is a hero. Actually, she's balanced internal, and her external balance goes close to an error close to zero. That means she's approaching gold, or he's a hero. We are going to talk with mathematics how this happened in later lectures, all right, with her actions there. And the result, the consequences of Olga is that she saved the life of the beggar.
Well, I agree.
And
The
this is-
lower with the
in
knowledge.
In general, I
Sorry.
agree with what you're saying, but there are some comments that I hear that seem to be very absolute. I'm not sure that, for example, you said that he's out of balance, Lushkov, because he's a beggar. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that being a beggar, for whatever reason, means that a person is out of balance in the
Yeah.
in Plato's sense, or in Aristotle's sense, in Plato's sense.
But he's
Could
not
you
in the norm
explain?
of society. He's not in the norm of
Well,
society. Being a
the
beggar.
law,
yeah.
just a moment, one by one. I think that the lawyer with the knowledge and good and wise tried to animate the beggar, not by giving money, but work.
Right.
An
Right.
internal balance of virtue that gives us the explanation that if he did alms to him, he would maintain his laziness. I agree with the professor because this is the point.
I agree. Right.
Well, you know, I think that there's an issue here that we need to discuss. I mean, we're making assumptions that work and being lazy and being and working hard are our values, are positive values. Okay. We are making those assumptions, and I'm not saying that they're not. Our society says that they are positive values, but I'm trying to understand is in terms of, oh my gosh, let me go back. In terms of the internal balance, the Plato's internal balance, I don't understand why being a beggar is not in balance. Okay, why is it out of balance?
Can I answer that?
Why? Tell me why.
Yeah, the why is a matter of the society to decide. This
That's
is the way how
exactly.
procedures work, but to work the democratic procedures, we have to have people educated. That means with internal and external balance. Okay, to be able to put these limits. That beggar is a bad thing. Okay.
Plato, then Plato's philosophy, then Plato's internal balance is, can we say, is dependent on the society that people live in?
Society values, of course.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, we get lost. We go out of human dimensions. If we start, you know, not putting some bounds where to move the discussion.
I mean, I understand we're having a discussion and that's good, but I think that limits our understanding of the internal balance that Plato what is the connection between internal balance and the society that we live in? What is the connection? Are the ties, are we very much connected to the society, or is it Aristotle who tries to change the society? Who is doing what? I'm confused about all of this.
I think,
All the philosophers.
Stella?
no, it's okay. Let Dr. Hatzopoulos, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all philosophers, they work towards a better society with their own way. But the society is the one to decide the values, about the values.
Maybe you have conflict because you think that the beggar himself doesn't think he's out of balance. You know,
yes.
He doesn't think he's out of balance. He thinks that he is okay with doing what he's doing because the end result is he needs money to get alcohol. So I think in understanding it is society, we see society, and you know, society has certain norms, and he's outside of the norms of the balance of regular society where people work. Like he's not, like, you know, Dimitris said, it's like he's being lazy because he is begging on the street to get the money that he needs to get his alcohol.
That's
instead of getting a job.
That's where I was getting at. Just being a beggar does not make him out of balance. He's out of balance at the moment that he's out there lying and trying to get money from people. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying as a beggar, you're not within the norms of society. If, society
Yeah.
has certain norms, and
Okay, of this particular Russian society of
Right.
that time. Okay.
Right.
I mean,
Even
if he were in India, for example, he would be perfectly in balance with society.
I think if I have a permission, Helen raised a question, and I would appreciate if Helen repeats it. If I try to remember it the way you put it, Helen, what is maybe the relationship of the internal balance to the society and to the values of the society? I think Dr. Hatzopoulos gave an answer, but I would like to hear again the question, the way that you put it, because you said, I am confused. Can you go back and see what you really said that confused you?
But you want me to repeat
Yeah.
the question that I had?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to remember. In trying to understand these values and internal and principles of not principles, but character traits and values that an individual has according to Plato's model, how do those internal values and principles relate to a society, to any society? That's where I have a problem.
A question or a problem. I believe what Plato or the Aristotle and the lessons that we hear from Dr. Hatzopoulos are, in a sense, describing some values as being set by Aeonius Axios. Those, whatever internal Aeonius Axios and the internal of each person have to be looked upon, try to see, because the values of Aristotle and Plato, which are internal Aeonius, have to come to a beggar on the 20th century, a beggar on the 15th century, a beggar in India, a beggar in Greece. All of these internal imbalances or balances certainly have to be related to the values of the society, on which society you live. As you said, Helen, if you are in India, you have some different. So really, although the question is really very hard and I would say confusing, still is a question that needs to be over and over and over repeated and try to find solutions with internal balances, with the fuzziness and the theory that we just heard from Dr. Hatzopoulos, whom I really appreciate for presenting in a very nice, simple way. And there, I think, when I interrupt and talk about wisdom, not only logic, the Sophia, as we say in wisdom, is the one that probably will generate the internal balances and also the society's values. If you have educated leaders and leaders who do love the people and behave according to Plato and Aristotle in internal values and Aeonius Axios, then you have a society with values and Axios. Take care of those before. I think Dr. Hatzopoulos talked about education and everybody agrees. What do we miss today and want really to look through the Hellenism? Education. What did Aristotle?
Okay, may I say something?
Please.
According to Olga's character and her behavior, reminds me the Platonic dialogue Epsiphron that Socrates presents as he as his own charity, the fact that he shares his knowledge for free in his
Yes.
audience. Perhaps the first direct questioning of intellectual property rights in the products of the intellect. This is an external balance of Aristotle that Olga offered to the beggar with a great heart, we can say, with plenty motion. I think that, Olga offered too much more than Zverkov, the lawyer. That's all.
Yeah, Olga, and Olga's actions, according to her student, according to Lushkov, he very clearly tells, Lushkov clearly tells Skvortsov at the very end that it was Olga who changed him. It's very clear if we believe the words of the characters themselves. Absolutely, there's no question about it. That Olga's and his statement ends the story. That's the end of the story. Chekhov ends the story with that statement, and he leaves his readers to decide if the famous liar Lushkov is still lying. I'm going to stop there. I don't want to continue, but you know, Chekhov is very clever with words, and he's also very liberating. He wants his readers to make their own determinations. And I think today's discussion has been fascinating. As far as I'm concerned, I'm still, and I'm on a learning curve. I'm still learning to understand the thinking process here with the the internal balance and external balance. I don't know, Dr. Hatzopoulos, please.
Okay. Well, I still insist with the internal balance that we have to see which of the three components, desire, anger, and logic, are the one disturbs the balance. In this particular case, with the beggar, the distribution comes with the logic, because she has lots of options what to do in life, and he picks up only beggar. And the reason he picks up the beggar is because he's alcoholic to cover the alcoholism, his alcoholism. And this is a bias. This is a bias. Logic helps him cover the bias. So he is out of balance there. His action to be a beggar also is out of balance. And that's the result, to be a beggar. And now the relationship to the society, as we said, we have to understand that any society has her own rules. And no matter if there is written laws or voted laws, etc., there are rules in a society. And therefore, he knows he's out of these rules. Therefore, he's out of balance. His logic actually is shifted away from the balancing logic, and this is the bias. We are going to talk about this bias later in a lecture and how it affects human behavior. Actually, all we had today about human behavior is using the bias, which is either inherent in people or cultivated by various other sources like the media, etc.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, we have just 5 minutes
Stella?
more. we
Yeah, I
have
just have a quick question for Dr. Hatzopoulos.
5 minutes more.
Yep. You said logic for the beggar. Do you think that logic and desire can both be out of balance to have two of them? Because do you think the desire would lead to his decision to be a beggar from the logic, like the desire affecting his logic? I'm just asking your opinion.
Yes, the desire and logic, they do not balance.
Right.
Or they balance, but in a shifted way out of the society balance we say, to cover the alcoholic problem.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
if
we have
we can finish.
we have reached the end now. And
Can I-
I want
can
to
I
give you
have-
an information about the evolution of the ancient Greek language. The
I-
word arms comes
Thank
from
you.
the Greek word eleemosini. It
Yes.
was taken by the Latins and made it as alemosina. The Italians as elemosina, and the English kept the initial A and the consonants L, M, S, and make arms. Okay, I finished now.
Before
I
we
wish you
close,
a happy
Doctor Dimitrios, before we close, since
Yes.
we talk about, we chose an example of a beggar who lies, and we look into this story tonight. If we take the politicians as an example, the politicians, do they lie or do they tell us the truth? Are they logical? Do they follow logic, wisdom? I don't want to continue. I would just say Kali Anastasi, because the question would.
You don't, Petros,
I'm
you can't find the balance to the politicians.
No,
There is no balance to the politicians.
You know, I know. That's why I throw Dimitri
Unfortunately,
Mou, that's why I throw this at the
Okay.
end.
I give the floor to the professor to close the lesson tonight and say happy Easter to everybody.
Okay, well, the politicians actually, they are totally out of balance. They are professional liars, professional liars. And what they do, actually, they follow the mathematics called, how to say it? It's logic para consistent logic is called a branch of mathematics that could predict a liar what lies is going to tell. And this is the paraconsistent logic. And they are in that category. Well, to close today's session, I would like to thank all of you. Actually, we had really a very nice discussion. And to wish for a happy Greek Easter. I know all of us were here in this for tonight, at least, okay, the ones present here follow the Greek tradition. So, and everything, I think if we work towards the virtues, we are going to make a better society. And Hellenic education gives us the basis. All we need to do is pick up the ingredients from all the Greek literature and any other literature that agrees, converges towards this direction, and build up the education system. And I think Hellenic education has most of these bases to build it up. And actually, these two models, internal and external balance, is is the best basis we could get. Following all kind of Hellenic literature, you will see that always they go into this basis. They do not refer those as external and internal balance model. They don't isolate them, but they actually they deduct. If you study the literature, finally that's where they end up. And if we want a better world, we have to restart the education system on these two bases, and we are going to get a better world. And the better world is just to have peace, stop these conflicts and all these bad things they happen around us, wars and whatever, or on any level, and start thinking about the quality in life and exploration. We have to explore so many things. We have the entire universe ahead of us, and we can explore it, the planet system and all of this. So just get concentrated there. Why to kill each other or think bad things about each other? I don't understand that. And
a comment, very quick. And Chekhov attended a Greek school in the first 6 years of his life, of his school life. He attended a Greek school before the city that his family was living in was bombed, was destroyed during the Crimean War by the British. Just a little side note, he had a very good knowledge of Greek philosophy, Greek understanding in his early years. I just thought it would be interesting.
okay, thank you, all of you, especially Helen and Dimitris, the coordinator, but also Stella and Petros, and we'll see you next Saturday. Yeah.
Christos Anesti,
Okay.
everybody. Christos Anesti.
Καλή Ανάσταση.
Yeah, no,